It's great to have you with us from wherever you're tuning in from. For more information about Elevate Church or to contact us, head to our website elevatechurch.me and take us wherever you go by downloading our Elevate Church AU app. We hope this message inspires and helps you to take your next steps in your journey.
Hey there, Elevate Church. Hope you have had a great week. You don't know me, but I've heard amazing things about you. I'm Tim. I'm part of the teaching team here at Gateway. I also do a bunch of stuff with our youth program. I hope you've been enjoying this series on Jonah, this amazing prophetic text that has so much to teach us as followers of Jesus. So without further ado, let's do a quick recap and jump straight back in. So we've heard in previous weeks some of the academia that sort of surrounds this Jonah narrative about whether it's a real text or it's a parable style story designed to teach us some things. We had Jacob last week walking us through the challenges between when God says go and we say no, and some of the tension that can create inside ourselves. So we're going to jump into our next massive section. I swear it's huge in this verse, and look at some of the consequences that happen when we choose disobedience over following God. So let's jump into the text. We've had an introduction to who Jonah is. We've heard his instructions to go to the Assyrian capital of Tarshish, not of Tarshish, of Nineveh. And now we're going to jump into the next bit. Instead, good start, Jonah. Jonah immediately headed off to Tarshish to escape the commission of the Lord. He traveled to Joppa and found a merchant ship heading to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went aboard to go with them to Tarshish, far away from the Lord. But the Lord hurled a powerful wind on the sea. Such a violent tempest arose on the sea that the ship threatened to break up. See? I told you it was a massive chunk of text. Not really, but there's so much to pull from this. The text starts with immediate disobedience. We see Jonah, having been given clear commands as to what to do, choose to do the exact opposite and go to extreme lengths to avoid it. He's fleeing from God in the exact opposite direction that he's been told to go. He's paying money to get away. He's crossing what the ancient Israelites literally considered to be hell, deep water. All of the ancient Israelite understanding of what hell was literally called the abyss. It was this deep water. They feared it more than anything. They're a desert people. They don't like the ocean. So he's crossing the ocean to get away from God. But then he finds out and discovers real quickly that no matter where he goes, God is there. And God intervenes by hurling a storm on the ocean. By directly intervening in Jonah's plans and creating an unignorable disruption. The storm that God sent was a direct response to Jonah's disobedience, Jonah's sin. Timothy Keller, the author of The Prodigal Prophet, put it this way: all sin is attached to a storm. And that's true for us now as it was true in Jonah's day. And that's a complex thing to unravel. We find ourselves in many storms in life, and how can we tell whether this is a storm from God there to correct us, or whether this is a storm that happens because we're in a broken world, or is this a storm that happens because we've done something dumb? And it's never truly clear-cut. We don't live in a yes-no world, a black-white, a duality when it comes to these things. Our faith is rarely this or that, right or wrong. There's some complexities to it, which means we often need to take the time to really examine our storms in life. Either while we're in it or retrospectively after it, when it's all wrapped up and done, we need to take those moments to sit there and just look at the storm and go, hey, what was going on in this? What was happening? What is happening? And what might be the cause of it? So I'm going to walk us through some ways that we can analyze our storms. But before we get into that, it's important for me to say that these methods are for personal discovery. They're for us to take the time when we're in a place that we can to look at these things and analyze them. They should not be taken and applied to another person's scenario. I'm going to share with you a story. I was in a very privileged position recently where I was able to sit with a really good friend, and they shared with me their experience of suddenly losing a parent. One of their parents had suddenly just died, and it had thrown their life into chaos. They were really struggling. They were really questioning their faith. How could this happen and stuff? And one of the things they shared with me was there was these people with really, really good intentions, people that really wanted to help, lovely people, that came in with these misplaced theological consolences. God has a plan. God can bring good from everything. God is working through everything. Good theological understanding to apply to situations when we're self-analyzing, but caused this person quite a lot of distress when people were putting on them as they were going through chaos. These methods are there to help us deal with it, but when somebody else comes and pushes us on it, it almost feels like our storms are being dismissed. So we, as followers of Christ and people that are going to come in contact with people who are in storms, need to be really careful not to use these theological ideas to dismiss a person's hurt. Or, as a really good friend of mine put it when I was debriefing them on my thoughts for this sermon, these methods are for removing planks from our own eyes and not for removing specks out of other people's. So now that we've covered that, let's jump in and let's have a look at some of these storms. The first kind of storm I want to talk about is sometimes they're caused by our own foolishness. Sometimes we're the drama. I like to call these sins of casual disobedience. They're when we know what the right thing is to do because we've read our Bibles, we've been in church, we've seen the science and the psychology, and we've seen the ethics discussions about it. Things we know are good for us and good for people and good for the world, but for various reasons, through laziness or arrogance or just stubborn-mindedness, we move past these things and end up just doing dumb things that hurt us and hurt others. The mess that these create are really recognizable, but we do have to be really, really honest with ourselves. I have lived with depression for most of my life. It's just a part of my brain chemistry and how things work, and for the most part, I'm really, really good at dealing with it. When it gets really bad, I go see a professional and go get counseling and stuff. But there's a lot of day-to-day things that I can do that make sure that it works, it stays at a really manageable level. Things like eating well. I know I need to be eating good foods. I need to be getting a good mixture of proteins and vegetables. Sleeping well. I know I probably need about 8 hours of sleep a night. Do I always do that? No. Should I be doing that? Yes. I know I need to be exercising, and I'm not the sport guy, but I will suffer through 3 gym sessions a week because I know it's good for my physical and mental health. I know that I need to go out into my nemesis, the sun, so I can get the vitamin D so my brain can work. And I know when I'm doing these things, I feel better. My brain works better, my depression symptoms are significantly less, sometimes even unnoticeable. I also know that when I'm not doing these things, that all that stuff's going to get much worse. And so do my core people around me. My wife can now look at me during the middle of winter, when the sun's not out much and I've been spending a lot of times indoors, and she can look at me and go, "Have you been taking your vitamin D tablets? You're a little bit squirrely at the moment." If I'm doing the right things, there's not a storm. But if I'm not doing the right things, there's a very noticeable and immediate storm. This can be a whole spread of things. If we're slacking off at work and doom scrolling, our bosses are going to inevitably call us into a meeting and go, "Hey, what's going on?" It's a storm created by our own foolishness. If we're sitting in our friendship circles and we're gossiping behind people's backs, that's inevitably going to cause a fight. It's inevitably going to cause a drop in trust. And that's a storm caused by our own foolishness. We have a response in these storms. When we can sit there and analyze a storm and truly acknowledge that, like, I'm the drama, I'm the dum-dum, and that's to go to God with admission. We seek out God. We take accountability for our actions. Repentance is the old Christianese word that we use for that. And then we partner with God to change our behavior. So that's how we deal with our storms caused by our own foolishness. There's another kind of storm. Really grim one. Sometimes our storms are caused by our fallen world. Due to the chaos of life, other actions, the actions of others, or just the sheer fragility of life. Sometimes there are storms in our lives that are of no fault of ours. Things that we can't control. Things that have just happened because of circumstance. Or because we've been in the wrong place at the wrong time, or just simply because we're human and our lives are not infinite. No accountability is required for these. But we still need to turn to God in these times. In these times, our response should be petition. In these moments, we can run to our Father and beat on his chest and cry out in our pain, express our despair, rage about the unfairness of the situation, ask for him to intercede on our behalf. Sometimes in churches, we can get really sort of caught up on whether this is sacrilegious or petty, whether it's okay to sit there and like scream at God, cry at God, rage at God. God gave us these emotions, all of them, the joy, the happiness, all of it. He gave it to us all to deal with the circumstances of life. And he is big enough, strong enough, and most importantly, he cares enough about us to allow us to express them and bring them to him. And if this still isn't sitting right with you, here's some biblical evidence. Here's a psalmist. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? A psalm that starts with despair. Here's another one of the prophets, Habakkuk. How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out to you, violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Some hefty accusations from Habakkuk there. But no divine smiting coming down. Habakkuk's got an amazing story if you want to go read that one. And finally, if that wasn't enough evidence, here's Jesus. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus shouted with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. I can never pronounce that word. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? If it's okay for Jesus, it's okay for us. It is okay to spend a season processing grief and anger with God. It's healthy. And as a wider church community, we need to give people the space to process these things without trying to fix them. My friend who lost a parent was also sharing about how hard it was sometimes for them to be in church with all these praise and worship songs while they were dealing with this immense sadness. And these people would come in and try to correct it and move them past it. Whereas what we need to do sometimes is just sit with these people. Just spend the time with them. Give them the time to process through this stuff. It might not be something that we're comfortable with, but that's growth. Pushing through the comfortability to be able to actually help people. So, we've looked at storms that happen when we're the drama, when we're foolish, when we're sinning. We've looked at storms that happen that are completely out of our control, just chaotic things that happen because we live in a world that's not perfect. So, let's look at one in the middle. These are our third storms. These are the storms that occur when we are deliberately disobedient to what God's asking us to do. Much like a dear old Jonah running off to a foreign land in order to avoid their calling. Chances are, any of us who have been following Jesus have found ourselves in a tricky situation where he's asked us to do something challenging. Maybe it was to step out and pray for someone. The push to make a financial sacrifice. The calling to change careers. Big, risky moves that require us to step out in faith. And as often is the case in these situations, we can be tempted to run. Now, maybe we don't go as far as running to the end of the earth like Jonah did. But I think we do a lot of the modern equivalents. We procrastinate. There's always something else that needs doing, so we just keep doing those. We come up with lists of reasons in our head as to why we can't. It's like, oh, I can't do that. I might be embarrassed, or like maybe I get it wrong, or maybe I'm not hearing from God, or maybe like whatever. We stubbornly keep walking in our safe paths. It's like, oh no, but I know my job. I'm good at my job. I don't need to change that. Like, why would I take the risk? I'm good here. All the while ignoring the new paths that God is calling us to. We jump through all sorts of hoops, make all sorts of justifications, just trying to avoid doing something that requires us to step out in faith. Jonah traveled to the end of the world at great personal expense, crossing over what he literally considered to be hell in order to try and get away from this. And much like Jonah, as we're going through these scenarios, we often find that then the storms start. Doors that were open start closing. Opportunities dry up. Deals fall through. Tensions start to rise in workplaces. We find that some of the niceties we had just sort of lose their luster a little bit. Nothing devastating, nothing earth-shattering, nothing that's going to leave us ruined forever. But disrupting, loud, inconvenient storms. Things that make it hard to ignore the fact that we're on the wrong path. Storms that almost seem like they're there to grab our attention and redirect us back to the things that God is telling us. When we find ourselves in these storms, we need to suck up our pride and submit to God. And that's our response in these storms, submission. Choosing to follow Jesus means that we have to follow even when it's scary or hard. That's the commitment we've made. We are submitting our lives to Jesus to partner with him in creating a better world. The truth is when we partner with God and trust his directions, what we can achieve is so much more amazing than what we can do on our own. So I want you to spend some time over this next week thinking about the storms that you might be in at the moment, or potentially some that have passed now. Just spend some time analysing those. Thinking about, are these storms that have been caused because I've been doing the wrong thing? Are these storms that are just the nature of a broken world? Or are these storms that are coming there because I'm ignoring a calling that Jesus is putting on me? The important thing, once we go through that process, is to remember what Jonah forgot. Jonah thought he could flee from God. He thought that if he left the temple, where he believed God was stuck, and went to the other end of the world, that God wouldn't be able to find him, that God wouldn't be there. And I think we can sometimes do that too. We come and sit there and go, well, God's at church, God's at youth, God's at whatever life groups. And we forget that God's there with us throughout everything. And it's important to remember that no matter the storm and its cause, whether we've been foolish, whether it's just chaos, or whether we've been disobedient, God is there. He wants to partner with us, and he loves us. And that's the important thing that we have to remember. Let's close and pray. Father, I thank you so much that you are there for us, that you have a plan for us. And Lord, as we go through life and we encounter storms of various kinds, pray that you give us the clarity to help identify the reasons and respond accordingly. If we're being foolish and sinful, help us to be brave and come to you in admission and repent for those sins and correct our behavior. Lord, if the storm is caused by the chaos of this world, we just pray that you would remind us that you are a safe person to run to and to express our emotions to crawl into the arm of our Father and just cry and grieve for a bit. And Lord, if the storm is created by our disobedience, I just pray that you give us the reminders that we need so that we would come back to you in humble submission and choose to partner with you to see your great future. In your mighty name, amen. Have a good one, guys. Have a great week. Bye.
We really hope you got a lot out of this message. If you live in the Perth area, we'd love for you to join one of our live experiences. For times and directions, as well as information, head to our website, elevatechurch.me. For those of you beyond the Perth area, we'd love for you to connect with our online experience, which premieres every Sunday via YouTube and Facebook Live, and on demand immediately after. And to partner with us to reach more people by giving financially, head to our website, elevatechurch.me, and also download our Elevate Church AU app.